Hi there. So I'm doing my series on conflict resolution, and today I have a guest interviewee, and it's really more of a discussion. This is Alana, and Alana and I went to school together. Well, we were in school at the same time. We didn't actually take any classes. I
I don't remember.
think so.
No.
But we were both at Mental Science College, which is part of University of Winnipeg. And so I'm really, really pleased to talk with her today more about conflict resolution. And as I said in my earlier video, about what it is and how it's impacted us in our work that we do and what we've really learned from it. So Alana has been in the nonprofit field for about 15
About
years.
15 years,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're going to talk a little bit about that today and what she's learned through her job. So yeah, let's get started.
Yeah.
Okay, so how would you define conflict, Alana?
I've always seen conflict from my own perspective. I'm interested in interpersonal conflict, so I kind of view it between people or parties, groups of people, and just discord, just general discord. We're not getting along, we're not sure why. And that's kind of my simplest way of understanding it because it can get complex if you start to get into the bulk of it.
Yeah.
So just that general friction between person to person or group to group.
Yeah, friction. I really like that word.
Yeah.
Discord, friction.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of the times the definition that I'll use is that there is a tension or there's a disconnect between people and I kind of expand my definition just a little bit because I'm a life coach.
Of course.
And I talk about the inner conflict that we have, the mixed feelings, the inner tension that can happen when we aren't sure what we feel or think about things and how that can create some conflict as well.
Absolutely.
So yeah, both of those are really good. Yeah. So how have your conflict resolution studies impacted the work that you do now?
Right. So I've worked in the field of disability support in the nonprofit sector for just about 15 years. And I studied interpersonal conflict when I focused on that side of it. And what you're speaking to, like the internal conflict, I think about that quite a bit when I'm at work about how am I approaching a situation with what I'm bringing to the table and what is that client bringing to the table, or their families or other parties in their life that are supporting them. And it really, I think conflict resolution helped me to understand the different aspects of dynamics of groups and how they get together. So it's your internal dynamic versus a group dynamic, and how you're going to communicate while you have your own internal dialogue going on, and how are you going to work through your own conflict about what you're feeling, but also engage with the person or parties in front of you.
Yeah.
And how to make that work. So
yeah, that's such a key point that often when we have conflict, we think of that conversation that we're having with another person, but then there's all this stuff that's going on in our brains and our minds that we're dealing with at the same time. And a lot of times it's hard not to talk to someone without having that inner dialogue be constantly going.
Yeah.
So how have you found, what are some strategies that you've learned that have helped you kind of keep that at bay or lessen that or help you manage that a little bit better?
Yeah. I think it's really important to get to know yourself and understand what your internal conflicts are, so that you're able to kind of get coping tools and learn to regulate in a moment. So over the course of about 10 years, most of the folks that I've supported have dealt with anxiety disorders as one example. And so learning about what's my anxiety trigger, how am I going to be able to maintain that, understand and own that I'm going through that, but that's probably going to influence how I'm approaching a situation. So how can I get to know myself as one strategy? Coping tools is another strategy. Sometimes there's different social strategies people have had to learn, like what's a boundary and what volume, tone of voice, things like that. And people have had to kind of work through that. And I think everybody can learn from that, because if you've never had to think like that before, you might not recognize that your approach to a situation could be causing friction in that moment too, unnecessarily. Just because everyone's not understanding each other and meeting in the middle. So
yeah. So it sounds like a lot of things you have learned about emotional regulation when you're in the middle of a conflict, the tone of voice, how you're communicating, how your messages might be being received, and having that more awareness, I guess, of how people are understanding you or hearing you.
Yeah. I think it all goes to perspective and perception as well. So
huge.
If your perspective of the situation is one way, and the other party or group is has a different perspective, then you've got your internal mechanism going, and then you have, you know, the social mechanism going between you, and lots of different dynamics. So if you're able to kind of separate, this is my piece, this is our group piece, this is, maybe there's a third piece, just how that's all coming into play. That's so key in being able to have successful communication with somebody.
Huge. And I know, again, talking about me as a life coach, I know that's been huge. A lot of the clients that come to me have a lot of internal dialogue going on, right? Absolutely. There's a lot of that self-judgment. There's a lot of that feeling of, I'm not good enough. Like I say, I often help people pleasers, overachievers with that self-doubt, that self-judgment. And so what have you found, because you mentioned also anxiety, or there might be some nervousness or uncertainty and doubt as well. So how do you find that you manage that in the moment? Like, how did your studies help you? Like, was there certain strategies you learned while you were in school, or was that something you learned out of school?
A little bit of both. So I found that when I was in school, I kind of fell into conflict resolution by accident. I was going through some of my own personal conflict at school, met with an advisor, and once he kind of heard my story, he said, you know, I think that you might want to learn about this area of study, which seemed to be an organic thing for me. So once I got in there, a lot of, I'd say the first 2 years of what I learned really helped me kind of identify what I go through and learn more about myself, and again, my approach to things. And then the latter years where I was learning, say, mediation skills and conciliation skills and things like that, where I was able to understand myself as a player in this world and how I'm going to approach situations and work alongside people. So, and I learned very quickly that, you know, maybe mediation works for some and conciliation doesn't for others, and that I have a strong suit on one side versus the other. And so going into a job, it was really helpful to understand that I'm able to do these things, I'm trained to do all of them, but this is where my strength really lies, and this is where my passion lies, and how I'm going to help people, because conflict resolution is so vast. So I found my pathway that I felt I could identify with, and personally and professionally, that just seemed to be my wheelhouse. And
Okay, so I want to just give a brief little snapshot of what mediation is, what conciliation is. And how are those things even different than like counseling or therapy? Because that's a question that we get a lot. I know you've got it. I've got it a lot. So because there are differences between those types of techniques.
Very slight, but they are there.
But they're nuanced, but they're there.
Yeah, absolutely. So conciliation, I find to be a bit more relaxed and organic. So it could just be two people having that moment and able to regulate with themselves. Sometimes there could be a third person there that may be involved, but more neutral, whereas mediation is someone that maybe has that extra layer of tools available, resources available to them to hear what the parties are saying and help them hear each other versus trying to work it out one-on-one. And then in terms of counseling, that's a little bit more of a technique where, you know, the trained professional will listen to what someone's saying and then help them hear themselves and guide themselves through that process. Not necessarily fixing anything, but just helping someone allow them to do their own organic learning about how they're going to heal themselves each issue that comes along. And teach them the layers.
So teaching the layers and because there's a lot of layers when you get into counseling, as there is with conflict resolution though as well. Because the deep anyone who's done mediation will know you can get pretty deep into an experience of both experiences and how they're then experiencing things together, and that can be very layered. As anyone who's been in conflict knows. But and the thing I like to say about mediation is it usually it's a third party type of conversation that happens, and there's a third party that is, although not necessarily neutral, I think neutrality is a bit of a myth, but they are unbiased in the sense of they're for the conflict being resolved, but they're not for any one specific person.
Neutral in the sense that they don't relate to either side, but they can
hear both sides. So and I know that particular skill has helped me greatly in life coaching, because in life coaching, again, we're not there to fix anyone or give advice. We're there to help the person come to their own conclusions about what it is they need in their life and what actions they need to move forward in. And I also like it because conflict resolution is very future focused on looking at the goals ahead, which is again very much a coaching aspect of the way that we look at the world. So
Absolutely,
yeah, there's a lot of crossover. So okay, so I'm going to take a brief break, and then we're going to talk a little bit more with Alana about how it's shown up in her work, her specific skills that she's learned. We've touched on them a little bit, but just how that's helped her in her work in the nonprofit field. Feel no way. Yeah. Okay. Oh no, it's still going. How come it's not stopping? Well, we'll just